I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. My life changed completely in the past year, and writing about it helps me process everything that happened. I met my wife during our second year of university. We clicked instantly. Both of us were studying business, both came from middle-class families, and both had big dreams. We dated for 3 years before getting married at 25. Everything seemed perfect. After graduation, we both landed good jobs. I joined a big tech company, while my wife worked at her dad's manufacturing business. We were comfortable financially, though I was making more at the time. When I was 28, my department head suddenly left, and since I was the only one who knew how the department worked inside out, I got promoted. The salary bump was huge, about triple what I was making before. That same year, we had our first daughter, and 2 years later, our second. My wife's job at her dad's company gave her flexibility with hours, which worked great for our family. We had a good system going. Then 5 years ago, my father-in-law passed away unexpectedly. It left my wife and mother-in-law with a tough decision: sell a company or run it themselves. My mother-in-law didn't know the first thing about running a business, so my wife stepped up. She took over as CEO, and honestly, she did an amazing job. The company continued to thrive, and her income shot up even higher than mine. Our daughters were struggling, though. Between my corporate hours and my wife's new responsibilities, they weren't getting enough time with either of us. After much discussion, we decided one of us needed to stay home. My wife pointed out that her company might not survive without her, while my former employer had plenty of talented people. It made sense, so I left my job to become a stay-at-home dad. I threw myself into it completely. I managed the house, took care of the girls, handled all the errands, cooking, and cleaning. When my wife came home from work, I made sure she could just relax. For a while, everything was great. She appreciated what I did and often told me how much it meant to her. But about a year ago, things started changing. My wife became distant and critical. She'd make comments like, "What do you even do all day?" or "Maybe you should get a real job." It hurt, especially since I'd given up my career to support our family. She stopped showing interest in intimacy, too. When I tried to initiate, she always had an excuse. Eventually, I stopped trying. I told myself it was just stress from work and the aftermath of the pandemic. I tried even harder to make her happy. Nothing worked. Then came the day that shattered everything. Our older daughter had a softball game last weekend. I wanted to record it for my parents who live across the country. I forgot my phone, so I asked to use my wife's. She'd been glued to it all day anyway. She handed it over and went to get snacks. While I was recording, a message popped up. What I saw next made my stomach drop. There were messages between my wife and her young employee. He was 38 years her junior. They were exchanging inappropriate photos and videos, talking about their encounters, and worse, mocking me. He called me a wimp who couldn't handle a real job, and my wife agreed. I managed to close the app before she returned, but I was devastated. That night at home, when she tried to be intimate for the first time in ages, I turned her down. She got angry and told me to sleep on the couch if I was going to act like that. I did, but not before sending the evidence to my own phone. That was the beginning of the end of my marriage as I knew it, and I had no idea how to move forward. My wife had been my everything, and our girls were my world. Now it was all falling apart. I spent the next day in a daze but knew I needed to act. I found a law firm in another city to keep things private. Luckily, they had a cancellation and got me in that morning after I dropped off the girls. The lawyer was direct and experienced. After seeing the evidence, he said I was in a strong position. Since I'd left my career to raise our children while my wife was having an affair and barely home, I'd likely get child support, alimony, and keep the house. He even suggested we could get additional support for retraining since I'd been out of the workforce. He advised against getting a job until after the divorce, saying it could affect the settlement. When I asked about custody, he said the fact that she brought her affair partner to our home put the girls at risk, which worked in my favor. We decided to go for primary custody, allowing her weekend visits once or twice monthly with no strange men around the girls. The lawyer told me to act normal until the papers were ready. No fights, no confrontations, separate beds, and definitely no intimacy. Just keep quiet and wait. It was hard, but I followed his advice. I also got an STD test and, on his recommendation, paternity test for the girls. The STD test came back clear, and thankfully both girls were mine. I never thought I'd have to question that, but here we were. When everything was ready, she was served at work. She had to leave our house, and I got temporary full custody. The girls were struggling with it all. My older daughter knew we were separating. One of her friend's parents had split for the same reason. She kept crying, begging me to let her mom come home. My younger one just missed her mother. It killed me to see them hurting. Sometimes I wondered if I should just let my wife keep cheating to maintain our family unit. I even considered suggesting an open marriage until the girls were older. But I knew that wouldn't work. Kids pick up on everything, and they'd know their parents didn't really love each other. My mother-in-law called and asked to meet. She begged me not to keep the girls from her. I assured her that as long as she could separate our marital issues from her relationship with her granddaughters, she could stay in their lives. My wife kept trying to contact me, but following my lawyer's advice, only communicated through approved channels and strictly about the girls. Then came Thanksgiving. My mother-in-law asked if we could all have dinner together for the girls' sake. After checking with my lawyer, I agreed, but made it clear it wasn't about reconciliation. Before Thanksgiving, I met with my mother-in-law alone. She told me something I never knew. My wife had been cheated on by her high school boyfriend. Apparently, she caught him with another girl at a party. My mother-in-law was shocked that her daughter would do the same thing to me, especially since she'd been so happy when we met in college. The Thanksgiving dinner was awkward. My wife tried acting like nothing was wrong, trying to hug me, kiss me, hold my hand during prayer, and talking about future family vacations. I kept my distance and gave short answers. When the girls wanted to watch a movie, I sat in a chair while she tried to cuddle next to me on the couch. After the girls fell asleep and I carried them to the car, my wife grabbed me, crying and begging to work things out. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law yanked her away by her hair and started yelling at her. I left them to it. My lawyer said I'd handled everything correctly, making it clear there would be no reconciliation. My wife kept calling and begging to fix things, but I only responded about the girls. Christmas was approaching, and I knew they'd want to do the same family gathering again. I wasn't sure I could handle it. Things took a hard turn when the girls started therapy. The first session went well. They seemed calmer afterward. But the second session changed everything. The therapist explained, in age-appropriate terms, why we were separating, that their mother had betrayed me. I hadn't expected this so soon. When I picked them up, they were crying and clinging to me, saying they loved me. The therapist explained that the girls had noticed how coldly I treated their mother and needed to understand why. She said they couldn't progress in therapy without knowing the truth. That night, my girls wouldn't let go of me. We ordered takeout and watched movies in my bedroom until they fell asleep. In the bathroom later, I broke down crying, thinking about how my wife's actions were hurting our children. The therapist suggested temporary medication to help them adjust, but I refused. I wanted them to process their emotions naturally. My older daughter said she never wanted to see her mom again, and her younger sister followed her lead. I tried telling them they didn't hate their mother, that she loved them, but my oldest just cried herself to sleep. Then came an unexpected twist. While going through some work papers, I found contact information for my wife's affair partner's emergency contact, his wife. When I called her, she didn't believe me at first, but called back wanting to meet. In my car, she broke down. Then she took off her wig and told me her story. She'd been battling cancer for the past year and a half. They found it right after their toddler was born. She'd gone through surgeries, chemo, and medication. They hadn't been intimate in 2 years due to her pregnancy complications and then cancer. She was finally feeling better and had planned to surprise him, thinking he'd been a supportive husband all this time. Through her tears, she worried about her child growing up in a broken home. Then she tried to kiss me, but I stopped her, saying she wasn't in the right state of mind. She thanked me for being honest and asked for copies of the evidence. We ended up spending Christmas together, not exactly as planned, but it helped us both cope. After dropping my girls at their grandmother, she came over. We talked, shared wine, and found we had a lot in common. One thing led to another, and we ended up being intimate. The next morning, we agreed to focus on healing ourselves and our kids first, though we both felt a connection. The girls are doing better now with therapy. They're starting to understand that they don't hate their mother, though they're not ready to spend much time with her yet. My wife has become more respectful of boundaries since learning the girls know about her affair. As for her affair partner, karma hit hard. He confronted my wife at work, Things got physical, and he was arrested for assault. She's pressing charges. My mother-in-law told me about it, saying my wife had a black eye and split lip, but added karma is karma. I haven't seen my wife since, and neither have the girls. Now I'm waiting for our first meeting with the lawyers. The divorce is moving forward, and while it's not the ending I expected for my marriage, I'm focused on healing and being there for my girls. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, and all you can do is handle them with as much grace as possible. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button to help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.